Hashimasu. Let's start with a moment or two of Zazen. Just an opportunity to clear the mind and clarify the body posture and release and settle the breathing. Each out breath is a releasing breath. An opportunity to really consciously sink the mind into the body. Okay, and slowly come up. Again, ideally using the ground, support of the ground to push us up, and maintaining that connection to the ground as we stand. Letting the pressure of the ground, the bottoms of our feet, work up through the body, straightening ourselves up, opening ourselves up. So we're not standing up, opening up, standing tall muscularly. We're letting that ground force, what we call in internal martial arts, the ground force, working up through the ground path to open us, align us, and straighten us. Good. Now, feet fairly close, hip circles, do a little warm up. And other way. And knees. Other way. Apart. You start very small circles if you're not warmed up yet. So again, if your mind is in your body deeply, you'll be very mindful and gentle of the movements and not going past any certain points that the body isn't ready yet. Converging circles. Then knees out to the front corner over one foot, then over the other foot and back. And straight forward and all the way back. And then swing the hips through to roll the spine up. That's actually a nice warm up in itself. It's called a spine wave or spinal wave. I'll show you from the side. Have your feet about hip width apart, pretty much parallel. It's a very nice, gentle movement for the spine. You start by sending the hips back a little bit, almost like we're sitting back into a chair. But the chair, usually we sit down, straight down. It's gonna be back a bit. So you send your tailbone back a bit. And so we can emphasize a tailbone being pulled forward, like someone has a string around the tailbone, pulling the tailbone forward, and it rolls up your spine. Then we set back a little bit again. The idea and feeling is one bone at a time, one vertebrae at a time. We're rolling the spine forward, eventually up to the neck and out through the top of the head. So not only is this good articulation of the spine, getting the spine mobilized, it also develops that mind-body connection. We're having to really sink our concentration into the body and try to connect to one vertebra at a time with our mind, our awareness. So not only is that opening and releasing the physical body, we're developing the mind's ability to enter into the body, sense the body more deeply, more finely, and have more coordinated control with the body. Let's try a couple more of those. Okay, we can actually do the same thing sideways. Now make sure your knees are bent a little bit, and you want to make sure the lower back is flat. It's easy to kink, or at the very least restrict your movement when these muscles are short and we have that curve here. So you want to hang the hips, lengthen the lower back. And same thing, starting with the tailbone, one bone, then the next bone, then the next bone, but now sideways. So everything stays here until it's pulled. It's like, I always have the imagery of seaweed at the bottom of the lake, at the bottom of the ocean, swaying in the water. And that's our spine. Very good for keeping the spine limber, flexible and mobile, especially if we're doing a lot of sitting or just simply not doing a lot of activity. This can be very, very good to do right before you go to bed. And after a day of compression and tension, it's a good way to release the spine. A lot of times when we go to bed and we sleep, we don't really release. We don't really let go and release. So a lot of the tension that we have during the day or during the week, to some degree, that's held even while we're sleeping. So the body's still frozen, concretized by some of that tension. So doing a nice movement like this kind of addresses all the joints in the body. You might notice your hip joints and your knee joints, ankle joints. Everything's getting kind of rolled and rotated. So very good to do right before you go to bed. And it can be very good to do, of course, right after you get up to get the body ready for movement. And you'll get better at articulating one bone at a time as you get better at the mind sinking into the body. Okay. One foot in front of the other. Again, hang out, so weight sinks. Press the front foot to send you back. Press the back foot into the ground to send you forward. So we're not throwing our weight around. We're using the ground. And we're like a passive passenger. The upper body certainly is. And then we're like on rails. So we're not striving or struggling. We're just a passenger. We're using the ground to cause our movement. And then we can allow those arms to just completely hang loose like loose ropes, hanging ropes. So I'm not doing that. My arms, I'm just letting them move naturally. And I get a chance to work on releasing the body, especially the shoulders and arms. So just letting them swing like loose ropes. Keeping the legs relaxed even as we use them. So we press into the ground, send me back, press into the ground, send me forward. But we don't want to contract those muscles. You keep the thighs and knees still relaxed, open and relaxed, even as you're apparently using them. It's more like you're just using the ground, pressure and force of the ground, up through your open, empty, relaxed body. So even the legs aren't constricting. And other side. And don't get those arms going. Just do the movement, use the ground, do the movement forward and back. Let the arms come. Just naturally. And can we take this aligned relaxation into our techniques, into our movements, and even our techniques with the partner? Relaxed, soft, but at the same time, open and aligned. And gradually winding down, so we get a chance to really experience those arms gradually and naturally being pulled into vertical stillness by gravity. And then coming here to shoulder width, knees bent, and then just turning at the hips, and then a different kind of arm swing. So now lateral arm swing. Again, same challenge. Can I keep this totally soft and passive and not do it? And that's what happens in technique. This is totally not only we want to take the quality of our feeling, quality of our body into technique, soft yet open and aligned, but mentally, emotionally, this is training to stay soft and relaxed, because what happens, we can do all kinds of soft, relaxing movements. As soon as we do a technique, especially if it's with a partner, especially if it's with a big, strong partner, what happens? All that stuff goes out the window. We come back to conquer ties, tension, and all those old habits. So this is mind training, feeling training, just as much as physical training. And we want to take this conscious agreeing with gravity, opening and agreeing with natural forces into actual technique, even when we're working, interacting with a partner. So this would be that kind of using effort and technique, muscle and technique. This would be the equivalent if I'm doing a solo exercise. My arms are doing it. My upper body's doing it. My shoulders are doing it. I can feel the compactness, the tightness in my shoulders. So we're training the body and the mind and our feeling to be cultivated to become something else, something different than that concretized tightness, compacting, forcing, efforting. So this is not just a warm-up. This is conditioning, training, cultivating the body and the mind. And if we have a little wider stance, light horse stance, feet out, knees out, we can add a weight shift. And so it just becomes, we're kind of graduating up to more involved movement, more intense movement. So now we have weight shifts, more of a turn. So there's more things that we can get caught up in, more things that can go wrong. So can we take those mental and physical qualities into this larger movement? These arm swings also can be done eventually much more vibrantly. So feel free if you want to add not more force, you're adding more natural forces by pressing into the ground more strongly or dropping more freely, more of a free fall down that leg, a more of a free fall down through that foot. That sends me more vibrantly. So of course the challenge is once we go more vibrantly, noticing when we tighten up. It will happen for sure. Notice your shoulders pull in, your muscles contract, and you either intend and will yourself to relax more or back off that intense movement, bring it back to something a little smaller or slower where you're not reacting, and then gradually you increase the intensity of the movement and take that quality of mind and body with you. So I don't want to then go into a harder, stronger movement and lose all that. Can I bring all that soft yet open and aligned quality into a more intense movement? Can I move more briskly, more intensely, eventually full speed without any commensurate tightening and efforting, contracting? Can I get very vibrant without losing those open, soft, release qualities? So these arms should be just like they were here. Totally soft, released, flinging ropes, not arms doing it. So that's very much training mind and body, training a different way of being and doing. Now, different version of that arm swing is shifting the weight the other way. So we were doing, this is the basic hip turn. I shift the weight, I turn the hips in the direction that I'm shifting the weight. Again, a helpful imagery is I'm hanging from an elastic that elongates the spine and flattens the lower back. So I'm not up here not tight up here, not compacted here. I'm hanging. That puts all the good work into the legs. So the alternate hip turn is I turn the hips to the empty leg. So if I'm shifting the weight to the right, I turn the hips to the left. As I'm shifting the weight to the left, I turn the hips to the right. So I turn the hips to the empty leg instead of the full leg. This is the full leg, standard hip turn. This is the alternate hip turn. Can I enter my body with my intention and awareness and release the body from the inside? Let go, soften, release, and open. Now, if we go back to the standard hip turn for a moment, shifting the weight and turning the hips in the same direction, we can add a bit more of a turn by coming up on the ball of that back leg. Allows me to turn a bit more. I can turn my head a bit more too to get a little bit more movement in the spine and neck. Releasing the abdomen. Okay, and again, forward and back in that stance, pressing into the ground. This time it's going to be to motivate that one arm. The arm is just hanging with gravity. So if I stop that pulsing into the foot, my arm is just hanging. That's all my arm is doing. It's not doing this at all. Arm is just doing this, just hanging with gravity. But as I press my foot into the ground to shift the weight, that arm is relaxed and loose. It's obviously going to swing very naturally. So we don't want to add any stuff into it. We want to add stuff that's done at the ground. And then if you're ready to do it, you can pulse a little bit more to get a full circle. I was saying to Senpai the other day, just the other class, there's a couple different ways of motivating that relaxed free arm swing. So one way is, as I'm describing it now, it's simply the shifting of the weight. The shifting of the weight is done by pressing the foot into the ground, not by leaning, not by efforting, simply pressing down, pressing down, pressing down. So that's one way to motivate the arm, weight shift. The other way is hip turn. So if I turn the hip back, that'll swing the arm back. I turn the hip back, I turn the hip back, I turn the hip back. So again, the idea that I'm not using the arm to swing the arm, it's coming from the body. Where before it was from the legs and feet, this is from hip turn. So different way, but the concept is the same, that it's not the arm doing it. The shoulder is neutral, open and released. The movement's coming from either the legs and or the hips. And then let it be taken by gravity purely. And then I can emphasize the turning of the hip forward to initiate a forward swing of the arm. And I just keep using that movement in a coordinated rhythmical fashion to keep that arm in a very strong, vital rotation without any arm work being done. So I just did that hip turn back and emphasize that hip turn back, hip turn forward now. Arm is just hanging neutrally. Hip turn forward, forward, forward. Bend those knees. Hang from the string or the elastic. And enjoy that completely free and released movement in the shoulder joint. And choose to let gravity take the arm completely and be with the process of gravity naturally, peacefully bringing that arm to vertical stillness. turn. So you can do either approach, pressing into the foot, move forward and back to get the arm swinging, or the moving, turning of the hip. And then you can coordinate both, where I have a pulsing and a hip turn. You can bring the two together. It's good to separate them for a while so you're very clear about those different methods. But eventually pressing down can open the hip. Pressing down can turn the hip. Pressing down opens the hip back. Pressing down not only sends my weight forward, but turns the hip forward. So you can bring those two together. If you try to bring them together right away, they'll both be blurry. You're kind of doing each one sort of, a little bit, but they're not really fully developed or clear. So it's best just to do the pulsing or the weight shift or the hip turn. Let gravity take that arm completely. Enjoy the process of aligning with gravity, taking that arm, and then starting the other direction. Practicing neutralness, softness, relaxedness, a type of non-doing. That's a major principle in internal arts, non-doing. In Chinese and Tai Chi is called Wu Wei. So this is doing. That's actually where strain can occur, injury. Now, if I'm doing the same sort of straining and efforting with another person, a partner or an opponent, the chance of injury increases even more. And the chance of them resisting me increases more because they're not going to like that. And they're going to naturally, without even thinking about it, resist and fight back. So all that efforting we notice here, we want to release that, become soft and relaxed, non-doing. This is doing a technique on someone. So getting away from this doing, this excessive doing, and coming to this concept of non-doing. What we need to do, the doing part is in our mind, our intention. And a lot of the physical part, we don't do anymore. So again, simple weight shifting, doing weight shift, do weight shift, doing weight shift, that creates a lot of problems and vulnerabilities and weaknesses. So I don't do a weight shift per se. I don't do a weight shift. What I do is I align, relax, allow gravity to work. So that takes awareness and intention. So the work is inside, not outside. And then the outside work starts to happen for me, and more happens for me. I'm not shifting my weight back. I'm pressing down, releasing down with gravity. I'm sent back. I don't have to shift the weight forward. I align, open the body so gravity can fall freely through my aligned structure. I have a mental vector, an intentional vector that way. And as I release down, I'm sent that way. So the non-doing is I'm sent that way. The weight shift happens for me. Okay, so let's come here. Light horse stance. And little pulsing in the ground now, both feet equally. We just did one foot, then the other foot for forward and back weight shift. Now we press down to be sent up. So we don't have to do the up part. That part is the Wu Wei. I don't have to go up. I align, relax with gravity, press down, it sends me up. So I don't have to effort into up. And if I let my arms hang totally soft, passive, and relaxed again, like hanging ropes, I can get them to swing by pulsing to the ground. Now I have to have that intentional vector for them to start to swing in that direction. Otherwise, they might just bounce, right? If I have no intentional vector, no intentional direction with my arms, and I pulse up and down, they'll just bounce and hang. And that's okay too. In fact, this is another This is a type of a Qigong exercise, bouncing gong. This is actually another type of health and mind-body exercise where I just bounce. And so that is very much what we're doing, relaxing, letting gravity work through us. But we're going to have an intentional vector, intentional direction that will create an arm swing rather than just an up and down bounce. But the action is just simply pressing up, pressing up, pressing up. If I had no intentional vectors at all, my arms would just kind of bounce with that up and down pulsing. If I have an intentional vector for that swing to happen, the arms will start to swing. But again, it's not my arms doing it. And then, of course, it takes a little bit of timing, a little bit of rhythm. It might take a few moments to get into a relaxed rhythm. So this is just a different setup for the arm swings. Same process, same learnings, same conditioning. So I'm not doing this with my arms at all. My arms are just. And once we get a sense of that rhythm and coordination, we can pulse a little more strongly and get those arms moving a little further. So my arms are not moving further, they're being moved further. And if we have, again, a clear, intentional direction and a strong pulse, we can get a full arm turn, arm swing. But again, the arms are still just doing this. So as I time this, probably the easiest way to approach this, if this is a little bit difficult at first or new for you, the pulsing down into the ground, which sends me up, have the intentional vector that's going to fling the arms out. They'll come back on their own, of course, especially as you relax down into a little squat. Arms will come down on their own with gravity, of course. When you pulse again into the ground, popping you up, have the intentional vector that flings the arms out. But you might be able to notice that my arms are not doing that. The arms are flung out by pressing into the ground. And of course, they fall back naturally as I fall back down to the ground. And if you have a sense of that, eventually you just increase that pulse. Try not to add anything to the arms. You get that full circle, ideally without adding anything, ideally without doing it with the arms. And we can go the other way as well. Relaxing those shoulders, neutralizing, dissolving those shoulders. And then choosing to let gravity completely work as we come to stillness. Let those arms be taken by gravity. Excellent. So notice what you feel. You might feel tingling in the body, vibration. Notice the sensations. Notice the kind of the relaxedness, maybe kind of a heavy solidity, but also a lightness at the same time. So it's called in Chinese, these are actual Qigong exercises as well. And the bouncing gong and shaking gong is part of the health technologies. So it's very healthy for the endocrine system and releasing tension and getting the mind to find a different way to work rather than efforting and always fighting against gravity, fighting against someone else. I learned to relax, but I need that alignment. If I'm just relaxed, I'm just a blob on the floor. So the work is the internal work of awareness and alignment. So I stay clear and open and not formless into a blob. Now let's try to take those feelings and ideas into this program work, Tano Henko. Now, one of the things about our structures, Minucci, in this case, it's here, palm up. We're always talking about extension, elbow away from the body. That can give the impression, the illusion that that's hard and stiff. We want to get away from that as soon as possible. We have shape, we have form because of our intentional flow. But the arms are no different than what we were just doing. They have a shape because I have a strong forward outflow, strong intentional current. But I shouldn't be tightening, holding on. If I'm tightening and holding on, our partner can easily fight us, find us, and resist us. So it should be the same sort of feeling that we're just coming from. We just have more of a definite shape, clarity of shape because of intentional current. So Tai no Henko, center line awareness, offline, and a slight turn of that foot. So you're preparing for a full turn. Just a quick reminder, do half a tenkan first, what we call tenkai, and then a full turn. Just to show you from the side there. So we worked on this recently, I believe. Offline turn, comes here at tenkai, T stance, half a stance, and then that full turn. So that's in there. Eventually you don't pause there at all, but we want to have that inside the movement. Otherwise we end up maybe swinging that leg around, kind of a big obtuse movement. You'll notice when I swing that leg around, my upper body is also leaning, countering it. So we want to be aligned, center line, and then turn. So we don't want to have this wobble. Don't have this wobble. You notice if I stop halfway, that T-step, the T-stance, the tenkai, I'm maintaining my verticality and my vertical center line. So that tends to diminish this tendency. So let's keep that in mind here as we come offline. We'll turn on that front foot. This is halfway through, and then the finish. And of course, that forward leg is bent. Center line awareness, forward stance, offline, turn, half turn, full turn, waist stays forward. Now, when you're demonstrating this technique, you could demonstrate a slight pause there if you wanted. That's optional. And when you're working out on your own, you can have a pause there, at least for some of the repetitions. But ultimately, as you're flowing into it and doing more of them and really setting your movement free, you won't pause there for any length of time. It's just inside that move. So when you're doing a demonstration of this, you can have a slight pause or simply slide through that station, slide through that movement, slide through that position. Offline, turn. Offline, turn, full turn. Of course, you want to keep your wrists in front of your center line. Now let that arm be dragged behind. Let's try a few more on the other side. Offline, everything stays in front of your center. Forward stance. Okay, then the next form, next technique, very, very similar. It's just basically a continuous movement. So what we're calling Kokyu-ho window. So it's continuous rather than pausing at an endpoint. And we're just unifying, coordinating the arm movement with our body movement. So as my back foot comes forward, my body doesn't really change. I just rotate it around my center line. So I'm not doing anything again. So again, wu wei, non-doing. I'm not doing that. I simply rotate as I advance. It does it for me. I rotate. Center line flow. Right now we are maintaining a forward stance. So the weight is slightly forward, not largely forward, just slightly, just past 50%. Of course, the knees are bent, weight nice and low, hips hanging, because we're still just dangling from an elastic, gravity's flowing through us. Let me know if you have any questions with that. So senpai, keep your knees bent, keep your weight low. Keep your weight low. Of course, you shouldn't be bobbing up and down. I'm not seeing anybody bobbing up and down, but you could do with a little bit more sinking, keeping the weight low. Enter into the ground a bit more. Okay. Then Tenkan Undo with a slide step. So of course, basic Tenkan Undo is basically switching the feet. We're going to add a slide step covering more ground. Then the challenge is, can I stay nice and vertical, maintaining my harmonious agreement with the verticality of gravity, rather than lurching forward and maybe lurching back. Lurching forward, again, that's upper body oriented. It's struggle, striving. I just want to align with nature. Press off the ground so I'm propelled. Propulsion is from the ground. Keep my vertical alignment, just like my arms are just doing that hanging. I'm propelled from the ground, pressing down, and I maintain my hanging verticality over a larger movement. Okay, so let's start with 90 degrees. Let's do maybe a couple where we're not worrying about the arms. In fact, the arms are just hanging with gravity. So 90 degrees, slide step back, slide step in, step, slide step back. So check your verticality. Are you hanging out? Just like you're hanging out on a nice warm summer day, not doing anything. All that you're doing is pressing down into the ground through your foot, or even better, you're just relaxing down, releasing and relaxing down. Okay. Now let's bring the arms into it. Again, the arms, like arm swing, the arms don't do it. Pressing off that back foot drives that forward arc. As I slide back into that back leg, it draws the arms down through the downward arc. So try a few of those, bringing some of that quality of arm swing, maintaining that in the arms. Sliding, hanging vertically. Let those arms be driven by pressing into the ground, driven by that foot. How pristine can your movement be? Relaxed, vertical,